All right, we're recording now. So, Edmund, tell me a little bit about Selfkey.
Sure. Selfkey is a decentralized identity platform that aims to make KYC easier.
Pretty straightforward.
That's in
You
one
guys just
sentence. I can
completed
tell you
your
more.
ICO, right?
That's a quick pitch.
Yeah, you guys just wrapped up an ICO.
We
How
did.
much
We
did you
like to
raise?
call it a token sale.
Okay.
Yeah, token sale is, I think IPO and ICO sound too similar, and there were no rights conferred in our ICO other than the right to use the product as its utility token. And 21.9 was the amount targeted.
And that's you raised that amount, I believe, right? The crowd sale sold out pretty quickly.
It did. On the public sale sold out in 11 minutes, which was very fast.
Yeah,
we were happy with that result.
I want to ask you about that in a minute, but I think the first thing I think so. You guys have built up a reputation in the crypto industry. You have a number of partners and customers who use your product for KYC. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. In particular, we've done a few token sales in Q4 2017. That was kind of a nice business that developed over the course of 2017. At the beginning of the year, we were kind of just only doing B2B SaaS. We worked with some partners such as Standard Chartered Bank to develop kind of the third version of our platform. So we've been building since around 2014. And in the course of 2017, decided to go B2C as well. And that was kind of the evolution of KYC Chain into Selfkey. And we've helped some partners such as Gatcoin, for instance, to perform KYC on their customers during their token sale in order to comply with the regulatory requirements.
So tell me about your partnership with Standard Chartered, because that's your main banking partner, right? That's outside of the digital currency world, that's the business that you guys have, financial institution that you guys have worked with.
Yeah, we've worked with them quite a bit. I think that they're a very innovative bank in that they're trying to improve. They have a center of excellence in Singapore called Accelerator, and they work with different startups. We worked with them through the Supercharger program, and Standard Chartered is headquartered out of Singapore, so very easy for us to work with in Asia. They're headquartered in the same time zone. And learned a lot from that project, and really, I think, grew up a lot as a company. We'd worked with some smaller banks in the past, but having to have that institutional rigor of working with the tier one global financial institution was a whole new level of security and auditability and corporate governance and all the things that go along with it. So really learned a lot in that process from them.
How likely is it you think you'll be able to convince other banks and governments to go along with what you're doing?
Yeah, so we have two other banking announcements that we'll be releasing in the coming weeks. One of which is really exciting and innovative. A bit of a smaller bank. I think that smaller banks just are able to move much quicker and have a decision maker who can make a decision much quicker than a GFC. Your second question was, what about governments? We are in talks and negotiations with several governments to build an identity system. It's tough to talk about because you never know until the project's signed whether you win or not, right? I mean, obviously there's a lot of companies that are out for these tenders, but I think if you look globally, right, the way that we manage identity right now is clearly broken. It's largely not digital. The user doesn't have a whole lot of control. Even countries that are well known and reputed for having kind of a lot of due care for their citizens, such as Sweden, have undergone a massive data breach and had a lot of identities compromised. The Equifax event in the US sort of springs to mind. So I think that governments and companies and institutions are all looking for a new solution to identity. And there's a lot of evidence that blockchain is a great solution for that. And a lot of great innovative companies working in that space, us being one of them.
I still think of it through the lens of KYC, and it seems to me that governments have to be willing to, jurisdictions have to be willing to accept that kind of identity in order to prevent money laundering, in order for that to work. Seems like a long road to go before a lot of jurisdictions will get there. What do you think?
The way that I kind of think about it is is twofold. It's where we are today and the regulations that we have to meet today, and what's possible with the technology and where we can go tomorrow. And so today, we do require the notarized, certified, true copies of physical documents, and our system can handle that. But in the future, we'll have something called verified claims, where I can prove that I'm over 21 without revealing my age, or I can prove that I'm an American citizen without revealing my passport identification number. And that's really the world that we're heading towards, because the technology is there. It's very possible with blockchain to create this immutable record trail of someone's identity. Whether that's acceptable under the current laws and regulations is another story. So we want to build the technology that kind of gets us across that chasm, where it's both compliant with today's laws, but is building an opportunity for tomorrow's future, which is safer, better, and more secure.
I guess the risk is that you end up too far ahead of the curve on something like that, given that it depends not just on consumers wanting it, but on governments being agile enough to adopt it.
Maybe. I mean, the way that we've tried to design our system is actually so that it can be useful today and better than the current market solution. So let me give you an example. A bank that we'll be announcing a partnership with currently right now is using a completely, non-workflow, highly manual process of onboarding customers, where the customer has to fill in their company name about 4 times in the application. Right. So even right now, I think we provide a much better, quicker solution that's more efficient for the user. But under today's circumstances, they are required under their regulatory regime, where they're incorporated to collect physical copies of the documents. So that is an encumbrance. However, with education and with multiple players in the market kind of driving, I think that we will see regulatory regime. And when you're building a startup, it doesn't really make sense to build towards kind of a solution that's relevant today, this week. You kind of have to skate to where the puck is going, Wayne Gretzky analogy. You have to move the market sometimes as a company. It's better to create a category sometimes than it is to try to overcome and take an existing pie. So I think that's kind of what us and other companies are trying to build, especially in the blockchain space. And I think that's not only unique to identity. There's a lot of other analogies there as well, for different blockchains in different sectors, whether it's currency or bonds or securities or what have you. A lot of it might not be hyper relevant, multi-billion-dollar market today. It's a niche offering, but it's much better. And I think over time it will grow and become the norm rather than the exception.
But your offering today is more almost like a SaaS onboarding application for bank clients. Is that right?
Yeah, that's part of it. That's definitely part of it. And another part of it is that we're offering an identity wallet that the user owns and uses to hold their data. And that's something that enables the user to have full control and autonomy.
Tell me a little bit about the token. It's used for payments in the system to notaries and others who verify identity. And it's staked by the financial institutions?
Yeah, I think that for a financial institution to stake, the key will be something that's difficult for the financial institution to do themselves today. So what we've sort of done is set aside a rather large part of our token allocation to do that on behalf of the banks, to kind of get it over the line within their organization, and also so that it's not an impediment or it's something that they have to buy it, because it's just realistically going to be very challenging to get a large bank to buy cryptocurrency in today's environment. However, it is possible that we could stake it for them. But I think where most importantly, this can be used is for the certifiers. And I'll give you an example of how we think that can be really relevant and an analogy to the current situation. So if I want to be a notary in the US, I have to go to the government, I have to pay what's called a surety bond. And once I have that surety bond in place with the government, I can then free to make money doing notarizations. But if I ever incorrectly issue a notarization, then I would lose that bond. And we kind of envision the same type of thing on chain within our system.
So the notaries are the ones staking, not the financial institutions.
Could be a notary, could be a translator, could be somebody who does a certification.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Other than that, the token is a payment. Given what you just said about the sort of barrier to entry for tokens, is the token really worth having? Does it perform a function that overcomes that tax on the user?
I absolutely think it is a useful mechanism. And I thought very, very hard whether we wanted to tokenize the system, because remember, we were an existing company that had a nice business, and this was a conscious decision to move into this space. And I think what we'll see is this staking mechanism within the Self-Key ecosystem actually makes this more reliant and better for all parties as opposed to not having it. Because when you're looking at doing a token sale or tokenizing your business, you have to think very carefully about a couple of things. One of them is a velocity issue. Is somebody just going to trade into this token from Ethereum and then trade right out? If that's the case, then your token really has a lack of long-term viability.
I think your token might suffer from that problem. I mean, wouldn't people prefer to transact this in ETH or some other more liquid currency?
Well, I think the staking mechanism is really the key and core component. So you're right that generally payments will be preferred to be done in Bitcoin or Ethereum because the markets are more liquid and its price will generally tend to be more stable than a new token. However, Ethereum and Bitcoin won't rise in value or decrease in value based on how many people are on the Self-Key network. Whereas if we've gotten the token economics correct and if we've designed our system correctly, we can't promise that the token would appreciate in value. And that's by no means what I'm suggesting here. But I think that it's reasonable to assume that if you can have more relying parties, claims issuers, and certifiers using the system, that key needed to be staked for those parties, that the token would be reflective of the network growth or decay of the network. And in that way, you'd be able to create an incentive for people to use the token and participate in this network and build the network in that way. Again, I'm not suggesting that there will be any return if you buy the token, but the way that it's been designed and the way that I think most tokens should be designed is that it has utility and that the network, as it grows and becomes more useful, is reflected with that token. So that's generally what we've attempted to do with our token economy.
Did you guys restrict the sale?
We did. We did not offer to U.S. persons.
Right. Yeah. Just U.S. or any other countries?
We also restricted China and New Zealand.
Yeah. Okay. And do you have I mean, that's another huge kind of dent in the market share that you can get into, given you have a tokenized business. Do you hope to get across that gap someday, somehow?
We do. I mean, we're a company that right now has a regulatory license to provide the services that we provide. So we've gone preemptively to a regulator, gotten them comfortable with our business model, and they've given us a sandbox license for the services that we provide. And I think in 2018 and beyond, one of the core elements that a token project will have to prove is that they're in compliance with the laws and regulations, because the users of the system will be at quite frankly, great risk if they can't prove that. And the burden of proof is really on the project. So if we were going to operate in the US, we'd probably look to obtain some kind of licensure or work alongside companies that were regulated. In any event, that's kind of generally speaking. Right now, we're not so much focused on the U.S. market. The U.S. is a tremendously large and interesting market, but also very challenging, very competitive, and a lot of very smart, large, agile companies and people working there. I mean, it really is a tough market. So in any event, we hope that we can prove this in a pilot in some of these quote unquote easier markets and make our beachhead there, and then look towards larger markets later.
Tell me a little bit about the token sale, because you guys sold out in 11 seconds?
11 minutes. I wish it was seconds. That would be,
11 minutes. Cooler. So what was the distribution? I mean, how many, that was about a $6 million float in the crowd sale, right? How many people bought that?
Boy, I would have to look, but it was thousands. I don't want to say the wrong number, so I'd have to dig that up somewhere. But we restricted the total amount for any one person to $3,000 of contribution to try to get a wider distribution.
Got it. Great. And you are now listed on KU Coin, is that right?
Yes, they made the decision to list us, and we had a good day of trading in the markets yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday was your first day?
That was the first day.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. Yeah, it looks like it's up quite a bit. Started up quite a bit over the token price, didn't it?
Yeah, the token price in our pre-sale was 1 cent, and the token price in our public sale was 1.5 cents, and now it's trading around 4 up to 8 cents. So yeah, that was a nice surprise. I mean, we're not really focused on that. We're focused on delivering a product which is amazing and useful. And I think if we can do that, the rest of it will take care of itself.
Great. Anything else?
Yeah, I just always like to, when I'm asked that question, probe the user with a question. If you're watching this, one question that you should be asking is, why should I care? I think that's always a good question to ask when you're evaluating a project to put money into or spend time on or even look at. Why should I care? Listening to me right now, why should you care what I'm saying? And my response to that would be, I think what we're trying to do is solve one of the most important problems of our time. And the question and the problem that we're trying to solve is, who owns your identity? As our lives move increasingly into a digital space, we're posed with this question of, where's my data? Where's my identity documents stored and held? And what is it being used for? Who has access to this? And right now, there's not really a clear answer to that question. In fact, the answer might be there's a lot of companies that are using it to profit off of you. And honestly, they're sometimes a little haphazard with your documents and your data. So I think answering that question of who owns my data is a really important question. It's one that we're trying to solve by giving the answer that you should be the owner of your data. And we're trying to approach that with a system of identity management that's self-sovereign, which means that the identity owner is placed at the paramount position in the identity system.
Great. Okay, well, Evan Lowell from Selfkey, thanks for taking time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.